Hi there and welcome. I'm Grace Russell, Marketing Manager for Sitecore UK, and I'll be moderating today's webinar, Taking Out the Guesswork, the Importance of Analytics in 2018. If you don't know much about, just to quickly go over a little bit of detail into the webinar, we will be taking questions for about 5 to 10 minutes towards the end. So if you have any questions, please post them in the questions box. We'll also be recording this webinar and we'll be emailing you around a link in the next couple of days. If you don't know much about Sitecore, I'll give you a quick introduction as to who we are and what we do. Sitecore is the global leader in customer experience management software. The Sitecore Experience Platform enables e-commerce professionals and marketers to deliver the most relevant experiences and content at any moment of interaction and via any comms channel. The web, email, mobile, social, and even offline. More than 5,000 of the world's leading brands, including American Express, ASOS, L'Oreal, and EasyJet, trust Sitecore to help them deliver meaningful interactions to end customers for life. And I'd now like to introduce you to today's speakers, Paul Fennemore and Paul Stephen, who will be discussing the topic of how important analytics will be for us in 2018. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Grace, for that great introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are in the world listening into this just at the moment. So I'm very happy to actually do this next piece, and I'll be passing on to then the other Paul Stephen, the Sagittarius, in due course. So what I thought I would do, just by way of introduction, is to do a little bit of context setting. I mean, we're all busy people. We've got lots of different buzzwords in this industry: big data, small data, and so on and so forth, analytics and insight. I thought it would be a good idea just to make sure that we were all on the same page before we did a deeper dive into what this is all about. So a little bit of context setting. First thing, this is really important. Data, as I'm sure you are aware, otherwise you probably won't be on this webinar today, is becoming increasingly important. We've moved into a world where, in some instances, digital's kind of gotten away with us understanding who our customers are. But as we use digital more efficiently and have more analytical tools to be able to pick up on the interactions of various touch points with our audiences, we are able to get a deep knowledge of our customers and to get that engagement. But without that data, without that insight, without that analytics, we're not able to be able to get that engagement. And this is why this is becoming increasingly important. And this doesn't matter whether you're a small company. I think if you're a small company, you've got as much or more to gain by a larger corporation by using data to great effect to make sure you've got that ongoing multi-channel engagement with your customers. And all this content is appropriate for both B2B, B2C, and government organizations. So it's relevant in all that context. So I also thought I'd just put this definition of digital analytics and what it's about. And we know it's about qualitative and quantitative data about our business. So it's about understanding exactly where we are with our prospects now, but also in the future, and our customers. But also, obviously, data and analytics is used for other aspects in terms of understanding where organizations are in the market and doing things like competitive analysis and such like. Primarily what we're talking about here today is about data and analytics, which is to do with improving customer experience, about acquisition, retention, upselling, cross-selling, and differentiating from your competition as a consequence of doing so, and to be able to do this in a continual way. So this is all about then integrating both your online data and your offline data, because we now have omni-channel consumers who are interacting with you both in the physical world and the digital world. And what we need to be able to do is to integrate and correlate that data, match and marry it, in order to be able to have that ongoing engagement in the right context. So for every organization now, it does mean that data analytics and insight should be central to any digital strategy, but actually there needs to be a data culture within any organization to be able to drive this forward, and more about that later. So moving on to the next slide, I thought I'd just show you at a very high level where we're headed with analytics and this maturity curve, which in fact has been built by Intel. And what we have here is that there's 4 different levels, and the first phase in terms of maturity is what Intel are calling descriptive analytics. And this is more about the what. It's more about looking back into the past. It's the rear view mirror, if you will. And also it enables you to compare data in terms of volumes of visitors and interaction and engagement from one period to the next. And most organizations are at that level. They're using analytics to that effect. The next level of maturity in terms of these 5 stages is diagnostic analytics. And what this means is that it's not just about the what, but also the why. It's trying to understand why people are behaving in different ways and why you're getting the success or you're not getting the success with certain channels accordingly. So it's putting data from different systems as well to be able to get that correlation, to be able to then get that view in terms of answering the what and the why. And the next phase is, just moving on quickly to the next phase, is predictive analysis. So these next 3 phases are really about the what, when, and why, if you will, and they are the more, I would say, advanced phases of using data, insight, and analytics to great effect. And not many organizations are at this stage, I have to say, but they are desperately trying to get to that point. So predictive analytics is about the what, the when, and the why. And it's about how you're making decisions about the future, such as which products are likely to sell more to which market segments based upon what's been happening there in the past. So predictive analytics. And as we move up these phases to the next stage, which is prescriptive analytics, where you're starting to use the things like machine learning. It's based upon all these other 3 previous levels of maturity to be able to assimilate all that data, the physical world with the digital world as well. And for machine learning and capabilities like that to start to really kick in, to say that if you do these things based upon historical behavior and activities and performance, in all probability you're going to get these outcomes. So this is becoming, it's really optimizing things like customer journeys based upon real-time journey and on conversion rates. And the most final powerful part of where the analytics curve is going is cognitive analytics. And really that's, this is full-on artificial intelligence, I suppose. It's combining predictive and prescriptive analytics and pulling data from all these different sources to get analytics and insight and diagnosing it and making automated decisions for recommendations. So this is where artificial intelligence really comes into it, because we're getting amassed with data, and the trick is to be able to use this data to great effect, to be able to deliver information in the right context at the right time to the right audiences at the right device to be able to achieve those business marketing and operational objectives. So that's just a little bit of context setting. In terms of the technology then, we have Sitecore, as Grace has already explained in terms of what it's able to do. And this slide here is a build slide, and that's going to gradually build. And I'm not going to spend ages talking about what Sitecore is, but essentially it is a customer experience platform. And the thing that underpins it more and more, and this is something we've built into the platform increasingly so in new versions and versions coming out, is this piece at the bottom here, which is this Sitecore X Connect, which is the ability to seamlessly integrate with other, as best as you can, with other sources of data, the physical data, the transactional data, and such like, to be able to then match and marry and correlate data to understand who your customers are, which then enables you to be able to slice and dice this data and put it perhaps into a central repository to be able to then, in real time, at scale, communicate with audiences by segment and to nurture them on an ongoing basis through different channels and to optimize that data through analytics. And then to personalize content, and at the top of this slide here is to be able to do this in an omnichannel way, in a consistent way. So the point about this slide primarily is to say that actually the thing that really underpins all digital marketing and communications now is data, but to be able to use things like machine learning to be able to optimize that data in the moment according to the prevailing market conditions that are occurring at that time. And of course we know that customers are now surrounded by all sorts of different data. They are omnichannel, and they are connecting and talking about your brand, your products and your services and your brand reputation across all these multiple different channels. And what we need to be able to do is somehow or other suck in all of that data to get back to this point of having a single customer view. And really this is the panacea And I did some research with Henley Business School and SAS Institute a couple of years ago now, and many organisations were aspiring to get back to the single 360-degree view of their customer, but we're finding it really very difficult because of all sorts of different reasons. Primarily, the integration of different data silos. We've got these data puddles which we need to put into a data reservoir, and to match and marry data from email, from social, mobile, customer relationship management, e-commerce, and so on and so forth to be able to make this happen. And I would argue that even if you get a 180-degree view of your customer, you're getting sufficient information to be able to engage with them in a way that supports, informs, educates, entertains them, as opposed to just actually sell based upon their demographic and psychographic profile. So we've got things like the core data here. So core data is mainly demographic data. Transactional data, as you might imagine, is the billing, e-commerce, sales orders, cost allocations, recency, frequency, and marketing, monetary value, etc. Then account data is not just the account data in terms of the transactions and their profile and their invoicing numbers and things like that. This is the ability to be able to get all the account data that you've got maybe with different accounts, particularly in the financial services, and to be able to pull that into one repository. And then interaction data is the data that you're getting from one moment to the next as consumers, customers, and business people and people within your ecosystem are interacting with your digital properties and being able to collect that data. And attribution data is very much about the conversions you're getting when you're running campaigns. So getting to that 360-degree view is kind of a panacea, but I would argue there's diminishing returns. The more effort and money and resources you put into trying getting back to this 360-degree view, perhaps the returns are diminishing. So it's about knowing where you want to get to, what data you want, what information and profile and persona detail you need to get with your back to your customers and your market segments, and start to see where the return on investment is going to be. And we're going to be talking about that a bit more later. Paul's going to be talking about that. So I was just doing some research recently about this, about where organizations are getting to this ability to be able to do everything I've just explained. And this is a piece of research, as you will see from the slide, that goes back just a couple of years. And we're going to ask you to complete a poll in a moment based upon these main criteria, these questions here. So this is where companies were a couple of years ago. It'll be interesting to see where you think you are now and how important these things are. And as we can see from this research that the e-consultancy did back in March 2015, that the majority of organizations were just starting to connect the dots, but had a long way to go. And in fact, very interesting that very few people had no plans to do this. They wanted to do this, but perhaps really didn't know how to do it. So I'm going to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, just to complete this next survey here. So the survey is coming up here. And if we could just spend a few moments, you just clicking on which one of these you think you are at just at this point in time. And then we can talk about that and think about how we might be able to follow that up with you just at the moment. So I'm just going to give you a few moments just to click on these A, B, C, D, or E. And things like no plans to integrate data across channels and technologies. Don't feel about being modest. Do feel free to actually say it as it is. This is entirely anonymous, so all this data that's coming into this poll just at the moment is anonymous, but it'd be useful to see where people are in comparison to where they were perhaps a couple of years ago. So let's just see what data we're getting. So hopefully you can all see that. So yes, this is just the same, isn't it? If we look back at the slide that I showed you from the e-consultancy a couple of years ago, people are still saying very much the same thing. It's interesting that people recognize, this is B, that they need to do it, but they've got a long way to go. And it'd be interesting to understand what's getting in your way of doing it. Not to say that we don't know, but maybe we've got some things to help you overcome and surmount some of the problems in making that happen. And that we've got some people tying data together from multiple channels. So we know that it can be done, but there's a long way to go. And it's interesting, actually, that people are saying that there's nobody here saying there's no plans to do it. So everybody recognizes that it's important. That's really cool. So some of the things you can do, particularly within Sitecore, is that you can gather this data and actually find ways to seamlessly integrate this data from these disparate sources. This is what technology can do today. A few years ago it couldn't do, and Sitecore couldn't do it, but now it's technically feasible and it's commercially viable to be able to do. So this is the kind of data that you can get. This is a profile card that harvests data from all sorts of different sources about individuals or groups of individuals. So we get the demographic data, the transactional data that I was referring to earlier on, but also more importantly, we're getting their psychographic profile. So we're able to see whether they're maybe demographic, maybe they're adventurous and working, whether they're price sensitive or not, and therefore engage with them based upon the latest data that you've got and their propensity to perhaps convert at some point in the future. So this is now eminently possible to do through things like XConnect within Sitecore. And what this data will also do will trigger ongoing engagement plans, multi-channel engagement plans, or cross-channel engagement plans, talking to people, whether it's through their mobile app or whether it's through their preferred website, or whether they're a member with you already, or indeed it's because when they come into the shop, if you're a retailer, that we're able to recognize who they are through beacons and communicate with them about particular deals that may be available that are pertinent to those persons' psychographic profile. So here's an example of an organization that's done this already. It's Dollywood. They are rather like a big theme park in the States, rather like Disney World. And they've embarked upon this journey, and they started to do this and made data central to the success of their business. And this video just lasts a couple of minutes, so I'd ask you to bear with it and just listen.
Modern families are so busy, they're losing touch with the things that matter most. Dollywood wants to change that by bringing families together for authentic, shared experiences that are wholesome and fun. But it's a hugely competitive market. To rise to the top, Dollywood has to deliver the right experiences to the right people at the right time. That means connecting all their different channels to unite their customer data instead of locking it up in silos. They use the Sitecore Experience platform to do just that. It starts with a total understanding of their customers. Dollywood uses Sitecore to connect their entire digital ecosystem. Their website, e-commerce ticketing system, and their lodging and booking systems are all linked via Sitecore's Federated Experience Manager. So all customer interaction data is stored in one central location, the Sitecore Experience Database. This brings together everything they know about each customer, the passes and tickets they buy, where they live, the web pages they visit, the email campaigns they click through, their past bookings and lodging. With all this data in one place, Dollywood can identify their highest value segments, personalize experiences, and improve the value of every interaction throughout the entire customer lifecycle. To keep learning about customers, Dollywood never stops testing and optimizing, always running A/B and multivariate tests on key web pages, emails, and other paid campaigns. The more they test, the more they learn, the better they perform. And an experience that wins in one channel can be rolled out into others. Zooming in to the individual customer, Dollywood's ability to engage in context turns critical signals of in-the-moment intent, everything from where they live to where they are on Dollywood.com, into relevant, high-value and personalized experiences. It's a highly tuned system that drives uplift in everything from engagement value to customer satisfaction to lifetime value. Dollywood did it, so can you. Connect your data, deepen customer insight, personalize every journey across every channel, and never stop testing. That's the Dollywood lesson. That's the Sitecore Experience platform. Sitecore. Own the experience.
So that was a pretty good example of an organization that hasn't employed a lot of people to be able to do that. They're using automation significantly and a little bit of machine learning now to be able to pick up all that data and understand their customers better than they might have done otherwise, and to then engage with them, educate, support, inform, entertain, and get them to come back based upon their expressed interests, and to be able to upsell, cross-sell, and increase customer lifetime value, which is really good. So we're now going to move over to Paul of Sagittarius. I'm going to hand you over to him now just at the moment. He's going to talk a little bit more about how you go about doing what I've just explained and to come up with some more case studies. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Two Pauls here. Hello, everybody. So I'm Paul Stephen. I'm from Sagittarius. We're a Sitecore agency. I'm just going to put on a couple of my details on here. I'm happy to take questions. Here's my email address. Here's my Twitter handle. So if you want to ask me anything before, well, not during because I'll be busy, but after this, then please reach out to me. Just to put this in context, so Sagittarius is a Sitecore agency. We really have been, the agency is 30 odd years old and really been focused on using data to help our clients. On one side of the business, we're helping them with their digital marketing to drive traffic to the site and create raving fans, as we call it. So that's really acquisition and retention of clients. And on the other side of the business, we're building websites and mobile that basically usually end up selling more of something, convert more sales, you could argue. So that'll reach out from, go from SEO and paid search, etc., right through to sort of website design and build and user experience. So that just gives you a little bit about us. In the UK here, we're probably one of the top agencies on Sitecore. This is how many clients we've got and how many projects we've done. Worked a lot on Sitecore 8 and using a lot of the XDB part of Sitecore. We've also been lucky enough to win a few of the awards along the way too. So that's enough of that. So I'm really here today to talk about analytics and how to use it. And what I wanted to actually start with was really the difference between Google and Sitecore. So just a quick one really. Google's analytics is something that we're all familiar with, as I've said here in terms of some of my sort of bullet points. Basically, it's free, so why wouldn't you use it? It's familiar to a lot of people, so it's widely used. That's all. In terms of it being installed, it's very easy to install. So those are all great things, and obviously it integrates well with AdWords, which is also a very popular advertising channel that most of us will use. But it does have some issues, and ultimately it's using JavaScript to detect what people are doing. So to a degree that is potentially unreliable, because if a page doesn't fully load or whatever, then that JavaScript won't fire. So the stats you get can be a little bit suspect, but it's fine if you just want the trends. And it does have the ability to track across sessions, but it's using a thing called client ID. So it's a bit more fiddly to understand what's going on if you've got several sites and you've got multiple sessions with them coming back. And it does have limits in terms of how many events you could track during a particular session. But it's a great tool. We do use it, and it's something that we would use in partnership with the analytics we get from Google. And I think that's my point really, is what we do with Sitecore isn't to replace Google. Google is there, it has its place, and we're not looking to replace it. So then when I look at, when I was trying to sort of think about this presentation, how we might then position, well, why is Sitecore's analytics that different? So firstly, what's good about it? Two, it's included in the platform. So effectively it is free. That is provided you're on Sitecore, so it's there. It not only just houses analytics data that's in your that is capturing from the site, it actually can house other analytics data as well. So unlike Google, which you can import, where you can't really necessarily import things, with Sitecore you could have all sorts of data come from different systems, as Paul was trying to say. It's got a great thing called Path Analyzer. I'm going to look in detail at some of these things later, but unlike Google's sort of funnel view, you can actually look at individual paths through the site and then start to drill further. So I'll show you a little bit more about that. Obviously, with Sitecore, you're able to then profile their use of the site based on tagged on types of content. So we can start to sort of build profiles of people rather than just look at what pages they've viewed. That then, with Sitecore, gives you the ability to look at individual people, not just aggregate data of, well, this 1,000 people are doing this and this 1,000 people are doing that. This enables you to look at an individual and look at what happened. It's not only telling you what's happened once you know who they are, but it also enables you to tell you what they were doing on the site before they perhaps signed up. So it gives you historical data as well. This is brilliant. It also then would enable you to combine e-commerce data, so that might not just be e-commerce data that's happened online. It might be other e-commerce data that's happened via an app, or maybe some other sort of commerce data that's come from CRM even. It's got the great ability to then slice and dice all of that data by different campaigns, and they may be offline or online campaigns, so truly multi-channel as well. It's got engagement plans, so we can then start looking at using that data to use automated marketing. So that's an amazing tool for it as well, not something that you'd find in something like Google. We've got multivariant testing, A/B testing kind of built in. We have things like engagement points to measure as well. So something like Google will have e-commerce value that you can attach to things, but then sometimes there are a lot of things that people do on site aren't necessarily attached to the money they have spent. It may be their level of engagement we're trying to measure. So that's a critical part of difference for the analytics in Sitecore, is you can start to kind of build up a picture of what people are doing, which you think is valuable, and is showing a propensity to buy, or whatever the main call to action is that you want, and then you can start to build on that. Equally, data goes the other way, so you can extract data out of Sitecore. We've got various ways with Sitecore 9 with its XConnect layer to do that, but even in the current versions of Sitecore, we have Experience Extractor to be able to take that sort of data out, combine it with other data, analyze it in Tableau or whatever you might use if you want to do it that way. So there's lots of ways you can use that data. We can also start using analytics and data, and even personalization can be injected into third-party sites that are on a completely different domain, using the Federated Experience Manager, FXM. And the other critical thing is the data's kind of live as well. I mean, you haven't got to wait till tomorrow to find out what the result of your test was today, or what's happening in terms of the users, and as that analytics is usable live as well. So if we're starting to build a profile of somebody, we can immediately start personalizing based on what we're learning about them. So the main reason for me so I thought it'd be nice to summarize the main difference and why Sitecore's analytics engine is amazing. So I'm just going to, the main reason for me being on here really was to talk about, just to bring it to life by looking at a couple of case studies. The first one I'm going to start with is a client of ours, Carnation Hotels. They're a luxury hotel brand. They've actually got 18 hotel brands. They're based in London, Ireland, USA, and South Africa. So, quite different places, and of course their audiences come from all over the world to visit them. It's actually a multi-node Sitecore instance, so this is one big Sitecore installation which is running 18 completely separate websites, and those websites then share functionality and components, but actually they've all got their own brand and their own content, and some things they share, some things they don't. So it's an interesting project, and it's also got elements of multilingual in it as well. So it's an interesting, complex project really. But I'm just going to talk about how we've been using analytics really to try and improve customer experience and conversion. So I'm just going to start by showing you this. Play now. There's the video. I'm waiting for a video to play. Ah, there we go. So this is just a quick view of what the old homepage used to look like. It was pretty cluttered. It had no real great calls to action on it, and some of the there was a search bar across the top here, but the direct link into the booking engine was pretty subtle, and it actually was quite slow to build. So there was a justification to rebuild it. So we built this new homepage, which I'm just going to show you now, which was much cleaner. It was inspired by something we'd seen that the Ritz in London was doing, actually. So we had much clearer calls to action on it. We introduced a dynamic TripAdvisor rating on it, so that changes depending on the hotel. It was basically rebuilt so that it had a more flexible layout and structure, so that things could be changed and moved around on the page as well. And of course, mobile views were much better. So what we did was we did an A/B test on that, but we didn't do it straight away. We didn't go straight to the home page. We used the analytics engine to full power. So what we did was we created this new version of the homepage. We then only showed that to about 25% of the people who were visiting the site. The other 75% still got the old homepage. And we predicted that the effect would be positive, and then we monitored that. And over the course of actually about 6-8 weeks, maybe 2 months, we increased that till it got to about 75% of the people who were viewing it, because we could see it was working. And ultimately, the result of that was there was a 17% uplift in the amount of people who were going to the booking engine. So that was a really important stat in its own right. We had to leave it running for a little while, and we did it gradually. Sitecore recommends you allow at least 3,000 people to have visited your site over something like a 2 or 3 month period. So we actually had, in 6 weeks, about 4,500 people visit. So we had enough data to make a kind of an informed decision. So we could see the effect was considerable. And then the oh, sorry, my next slides. That slide next. Sorry. Sorry, I've lost. I'm gonna have to go back and replay that slide because it started playing without me. Bear with me. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to dwell on was actually then how different the hotels were. There's 18 hotels here. What I'm trying to show you here is that, so for example, this hotel in Ashford Castle, the audience was mainly from the US and then a bit of Ireland, whereas this hotel, which is South Africa, the audience is mainly coming in from South Africa and then the UK and then the US. And then the Montague, which is based in London, is largely UK visitors and then the US next. So you can see there's an obvious reason here. We could start to sort of change what we could do with the user depending on where they're coming in from to the site, because obviously if it's a hotel that's local to you, your experience might need to be different. Equally, using the analytics, we could then start using the profiling to look at, well, how are they using the site? So largely, we created a bunch of different profiles, as we're showing here with the Oyster Box Hotel. We then started to look at, based on the content that we're viewing, what sort of content were they interested in. And we created lots of segments, but as you can see here, we can switch off the ones where there was only a small amount. And largely, most of the people are either coming to stay or they're coming to book a restaurant reservation, etc. But when you then start sort of looking at the different hotels, and go to the milestone now, we can start to see, well, actually, this one's, what is this? This is the milestone, so this is London. Actually, more of the people who one are actually Stay Susie's, and less of them are food and drink. There were other segments in there, as you could see, but the point is they were quite small, and therefore we didn't need to create personalization rules for them because there isn't enough of them. Yes, they are distinct. Maybe we can identify that they exist, but when it comes to looking at what are you going to do with this data, we have to look at what the likely ROI is. But the nice news story really is by looking at those profiles, and we can then start to split, particularly the people who are obviously looking for a restaurant or looking for somewhere to stay, we're able to start to change the content. So if they came back to the site, start going back to the homepage, we could then start to prioritize the sort of information that they might see. And ultimately, with this A/B test that we've done, so by doing that, actually we increased the average time on page by 13%, and the bounce rate when it came into the site decreased by 15%. So there was good stats there, but ultimately combined with the A/B test that we talked about on the home page, we ended up with a 20% increase in the conversion rate, so people actually going on to do a booking, and then a 30% increase in the amount of revenue that was coming into the website. So it's quite, 30%, this is a large company where the amount of revenue that represents is significant. 20%, 30% are large numbers in terms of increases. And this was just by looking at changing the layout of the homepage, looking at calls to action, testing that with how it worked compared to the last version, and then also starting to change the content based on what we know about you. So a really, really nice sort of clean example of how, by looking at data, we can start to make a big financial impact. The next video I wanted to quickly dwell on in terms of analytics from Sitecore is then looking at how campaigns perform differently. So what we can see here is that Bing, for example, is massively outperforming Google here in terms of value. So we're scoring value by, are they getting engaged with the site? Are they looking at making a booking on the restaurant or a hotel? So it's not necessarily looking at the transactional value, but we can see that people who are using Bing as a search engine were coming to the site and representing per visit anyway a much higher value. So it's another way of measuring a campaign, and we use that quite a lot because quite often you'll have a campaign that might be driving a lot of traffic to the site, but you don't know why, but it's not converting into a sale. Well, with the analytics here, you can then start to look at, well, okay, the campaign is certainly dragging in the right type of people, and they're engaging with the site. So now we need to look at the customer journey and see, well, why aren't they converting, rather than just writing off that the campaign wasn't creating the right sort of traffic. This is the path analyzer, which I mentioned earlier. So this enables us to look visually at the sort of customer journeys they're going through. And for this particular hotel, we can see that actually TripAdvisor is driving a large amount of traffic. They're then going off to offers. I can see they're then looking at other articles, and then I think the next one is going to show us going off to other nodes. So this is basically saying, right, these people are coming in and they're potentially then looking at. I'll play that again just so that you see it. So this means they're coming into the site, they're having a look around, looking at the offers, and then they're looking at the other hotels as well. Well, actually, that's a really, really valuable thing for us, because actually this hotel group wants other people to go and look at the other hotels. Hotel groups these days are very reluctant to try and sell their hotels via Booking.com and want to or any other OTA, and they're very keen that anybody who comes to one hotel knows about the other hotels and books directly. So this is a really important thing. That analysis I showed you there was just for one particular hotel. But of course, because it's a multi-node site, we can then start to look at, well, are those customer journeys the same across other hotels? So we can look at it either on a hotel-by-hotel basis, or we can look at that as a trend across lots of them. We could also then start to slice and dice that based on, well, in terms of customer journeys who've come in from particular campaigns, how that might be different, for example. So we can really start to look what all the different permutations are. Well, ultimately, we're looking for trends, and the things we're doing. I'll play it again because I think it's nice when you see it. What we're trying to look for is volume of people that are going down a particular route and what we might do with them. So what this is perhaps showing is this route. I'm saying by the thickness of the line and the size of the green dots, it basically tells me this is a large amount of people are doing this, and it's ending in a positive outcome. So therefore, that's good. But if I wanted to improve that further, that is the area I might focus my attention. And equally, if I could see a route was high volume and it was going red and not ending up in a positive outcome, I might decide, right, okay, there's a problem there. Let's look at those pages that people are dropping out on, and what can we do to improve it? And that's when you start looking at the whole user experience and looking how it could be improved, or A/B testing it with something else. So there's so many possible permutations there, and that's where actually things like Cortex, the new feature in Sitecore 9 that can start to look at that data and perhaps spot trends that you aren't spotting, is really going to be very powerful. The last thing I thought I'd dwell on then is another client of ours, FirstPort, won a Sitecore award last year. They're actually one of the largest property management companies in the country, got up something like 180,000 properties across the country, and they're the property management company. So really, their client is the landlord who owns the property, but actually, a lot of the people who live in the properties then engage with FirstPort to I don't know, complain that the light bulb's gone in the hallway or whatever it might be, for example. So when we started working with FirstPort, they said that 90% of the users of the site were going to be B2B users, because that's who their customers are, and there'd be a bit of B2C activity on the site. But of course, those people are very, very different customer journeys. A landlord looking for someone else to manage their property or want to pay his bills or whatever is going to be very, very different to somebody who's a tenant who's worried about the light bulb. So really, really different. So that was the challenge. Really, was can we use personalisation to have one website that could deal with those very different audiences in a different way. So they also, because they had 180,000 properties, they had something like 25,000 emails a month, and similar volumes of phone calls. And so a critical KPI was, well, how can we help reduce that by looking at what self-serve tools we can build into the site, so we get less inquiries. So when we built this site, we used a lot of tagging, etc., looking at what we could learn from them as they made their way around the site. And really, the data then actually surfaced that only 40% of the people that actually visited the site were really a B2B user based on the content they were consuming, and then 60% of them were actually business to consumer, people wanting to find out about how to complain about the light bulb being broken, for example. So actually, the analytics, because bear in mind we had things like Google Analytics before we started the project, which we were looking at page views, etc. But by using the Sitecore analytics and looking at tagging and looking at user journeys, we were able to much more accurately define the kind of people who are on the site. And again, that fed into us prioritising what should change and then what we would personalise. And I have to point out, in all these examples, we didn't really come up with personalisation rules until we had done the analytics, because we really wanted to know who we were dealing with. We had ideas about what the profiles might look like, but once you knew that they were the case and there was enough of them to warrant putting the extra effort into creating a personalised experience, then that was the right way forward. So there's another example now. So here we obviously then looked at how the website could change. So if you log in and we know you are a B2B user, then we will definitely treat you very differently. I'll show you. I've got these are some of the different profiles that we created. They've got interesting names, and it just enabled us to look at the volumes of people and then prioritise accordingly. And the Jessica the self-server down the bottom, the other B2B one was another one, and then even things like job seeker. When you've got a large organisation, things like recruitment, people looking for jobs, etc., becomes a very different segment. So that just gives you an idea of the sort of thing that we do. Then we had other segments that really they weren't there in high enough volume, so we didn't do anything with them. But what we can start to do is, once we find a particular segment, we can also do something I'm showing you here. So if we know a particular user in as a segment, for example, we can search for that individual, and then we can actually look at their individual experience on the website. So we can see their sort of which particular segment they drop into. But we can see here, so we can see this person is a client, they're a customer, Charles a customer, but then within that customer type, we can also see by the content that they've been doing that they're actually their customer interest is Jessica the self-server. So I know that they I know very much about exactly what, even a segment of a particular customer type. And then here I can even see the individual pages that they viewed over a period of time and on what date and how long they were on the site. So if I really want to understand why we think this person is this type of person, I can look at the detail. Also, I can see up the top here, I can see over what time they did that as well. And I can look at then individual visits and the data that sits around that. And that data builds up over time. So that person may have come on initially anonymously and started working around the site, and we started to build a picture of their profile. And then at a later date, either because they filled in a form or because we sent them something that enabled us to identify them, that would then it would be able to join that historical data up. So we don't only know that data about a person after they've signed up. So all very exciting, this analytics. As I've tried to show, it's the sort of thing that really helps you improve the user experience on the site, which always, I don't think we've ever tried to improve the experience and it not resulted in an improvement, because that's basically the process you go through A/B testing. So it's a bit of a no-brainer in my words that you should be looking at analytics and using A/B testing and user experience changes to improve it, because it will definitely give you the results that you want. I think as things go forward, when sites get complicated, like some of the stuff we were doing with Red Carnation, there are lots of permutations, and you're looking for trends, and how you try and prioritize that is always the challenge. I've got a short video now I was going to show, because I think this is possibly part of the answer to that. In Sitecore 9, we have Cortex, which is going to start looking at those analytics and seeing trends that maybe you might not actually see yourself, because when you've got so many different permutations, and it will then highlight them to you and suggest changes. It's an evolution, really, of what's already in Sitecore now that will already suggest A/B tests where it thinks there is potential based on what it's seeing in Path Analyzer. But Cortex is hoping to take us one step further. So this lasts a couple of minutes, so I'll just be quiet while I play it.
When it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning, every MarTech vendor is talking a good game. But with the Sitecore Experience Cloud, you're already way ahead of that game, because the Sitecore Experience Cloud was designed from the ground up to exploit the enormous potential of machine learning. At its core, the Sitecore Experience Cloud combines three things. 1. Contextual insights. The ability to discover the most likely needs and intentions behind every interaction, so you can deliver relevant experiences that lead to mutual value. 2. Content and commerce, each robust in its own right, and both natively integrated so your visitors enjoy a seamless and personalized experience before, during, and after every purchase. And 3. Omnichannel distribution, giving you the freedom to use the right channel to bring contextual experiences to every customer, wherever they are. It's a hugely powerful model that's designed to collect, connect, and process enormous amounts of data, fast, from many different systems. And that's where machine learning comes in. Introducing Sitecore Cortex, the intelligent marketing assistant built inside the Sitecore Experience Cloud. Sitecore Cortex crunches huge volumes of data in real time to increase the relevance and value of every customer experience. It's already doing amazing things inside the Sitecore Experience Cloud, like analyzing every purchase journey to identify the highest value audience segments, or testing hundreds of variables to continuously optimize key engagements, making them better and better over time. But that's just the start of where machine learning can take you. Soon, your intelligent assistant will be profiling customers based on their content consumption, building smart attribution models, driving self-learning engagement scoring, or powering automatic content tagging and intelligent recommendations. To do all this, Sitecore Cortex processes enormous amounts of data in real time, making instant judgments that support your goals, your customers, and the unique context of every interaction, so you can concentrate on killer strategies, wild new ideas, and global domination. This is where marketing is going. This is how your customers want to interact with you. This is the Sitecore Experience Cloud, powered by Sitecore Cortex. Sitecore, own the experience.
So yeah, I hope you found that interesting. I thought that would be explained a lot better by that 2 minutes, 50 minutes video than I was trying to do it. Very exciting from my side. So that really ends my piece. As I said, if you've got any questions about anything that you've seen here today, and or you would like to go through it again with me or whatever, then that would be fine. Happy to talk to you about that. But I think we're now, Grace, are we moving over to a bit more of an open Q&A?
Hi, thanks, Paul. Yes, I did. We were hoping to have time for a Q&A, but we've actually maxed out all of our time. A couple of you have already asked. Okay. A couple of you have already asked some questions in the question box, so we're happy to get back to you via email on those. If anyone else has any questions to ask, we do have some contact details on the last page. Before I go to that, I did just want to say we do have a bit more content on analytics. If you want to follow that link below, it takes you to one of our latest ebooks. It actually came out with the launch of Sitecore 9, so the challenge of gaining contextual insight via your website and other digital channels. And I'd just like to say a real big thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. I hope you found it insightful. If you do have any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to email the speakers directly or reach out to Sitecore UK. And if we don't speak to you beforehand, have a lovely Christmas. And yeah, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.